article into Google, it won't necessarily show up. Someone at Google apparently is doing this on purpose. On May 1st, for example, Google searches for Joe Biden generated roughly 30,000 views for Breitbart. After May 5th, views from Joe Biden searches went to 0. So the site was targeted. Clearly, Breitbart is conservative. They published videos that were embarrassing to Google. We showed you one of those videos at the beginning of the show. Earlier this summer, we spoke to Alex Marlow. He's the editor-in-chief of Breitbart News about what Google is doing. Here's what he said. So you were just censored by the big tech companies, Google, Facebook, and Twitter. But you've done research into the specifics. So I think anyone paying attention realizes there is censorship going on, but it's done in a very stealthy way. Google has been limiting your reach without telling you dishonestly. Give us an example of what you've learned they're doing to your site.
Thanks, Tucker. Thanks for having me. Always a treat to be with you. And I will start with some breaking news that I can share on the show, which is that Breitbart, we've done deep dive research into our Google traffic, comparing it to the 2016 election. And we picked that because we unearthed video a couple of years ago with our own Alan Bakari, who reported on the global vice president of Google, Kent Walker, who said that he's going to endeavor to make populism and nationalism a blip or a hiccup. So we naturally took him at his word, because if you understand the left, you understand that they don't tend to lie about such things. And we started looking at our traffic. And gradually, since the 2016 election, Google's been diminishing our search results. And then all of a sudden, in May of this year, we virtually lost all Google traffic, all search traffic altogether. Let me give you some specific pieces of data. Google tracks something called a visibility index. This is sort of like their Nielsen score. That's when your content shows up on one of their pages. Breitbart's is down 99.7%. Overall, our Google traffic is down nearly 2/3. If you want to search for Joe Biden or Biden, the chances of you getting a Breitbart article are virtually zero, Tucker. Virtually no opportunity for you to get it, unless, of course, you add the word Breitbart, which explains what's left of our Google traffic. Now, naturally, we looked at other outlets to see if there's a pattern. Of course, we have more access to our own data, but we compared the top 50 or so top publishers, and we found that 8 out of the bottom 10 when it comes to Google search are right-of-center outlets. That includes Fox News, and even the Daily Caller is one of the 2 outlets that actually somehow performs worse than Breitbart.
This is not a small thing. Google has a monopoly. It's allowed by Congress, by the shills who allowed this, Senator Lee, among others, who really should be ashamed of themselves. And they are therefore the gateway to all human information in English. So if you don't exist on Google, you don't exist. Did they tell you that they were going to shut you down in order to get Joe Biden elected, or did they just do it?
They won't tell us specifically why. They only provide vague talking points about things that are way out of our control and are non-specified, are totally subjective. And I think your thesis, Tucker, is right on the money here. This is 100% about the 2020 election and controlling the narrative and controlling what people read. If outlets like Breitbart cannot reach new voters via Google, then that is going to be all the more people who are getting their news 100% from CNN, the New York Times, and the people who would do anything in their power to get Joe Biden to the White House.
So maybe the Congress should have done something about this before allowing a company that is not an American company, it's not in any sense an American company, to have total control over all of our news and information. Maybe someone should have noticed. Why didn't anybody do anything?
That is the mystery that it boggles the mind, because I don't feel like the Republican Party feels the existential threat that you and I have been trying to convey to them. This is it. Freedom of speech in the United States right now is controlled by Google, it's controlled by Facebook, and it's controlled by Twitter. Remember, Google controls YouTube, Tucker. This is exactly why we saw these videos memory hold from the internet yesterday. And guess what explanation we got from Breitbart when they took down our videos? Vague, pablum, nothing specific. They wouldn't cite a specific piece of misinformation. And now all of a sudden, Google, Mark Zuckerberg, etc., they apparently know more about hydroxychloroquine, the coronavirus, than board-certified doctors. Exactly. And we should say we would rather talk to them than talk about them, so we asked representatives from all 3 of those companies to come on tonight. But of course, they ducked the invitation. Alex Marlow, thanks so much. Thank you, Tucker. So the tech monopolies are interfering in our presidential election far more than Russia ever dreamed of doing. Is there anything the U.S. government, the feds, can do about this beyond launching investigations that inevitably go nowhere?
We'll speak to someone who knows the answer to that question next. Just a few years ago, it would have been unimaginable for media companies to censor political candidates in election years, but now it's commonplace. Just this year, Twitter has censored several tweets from the sitting president of the United States. In one instance, Twitter, the company, accused the president of, quote, glorifying violence. Glorifying violence. His crime? He promised to use force to restore the rule of law on the streets of Washington, D.C. Twitter has also routinely used bogus fact checks to prevent users from learning that mail-in balloting is a massive fraud risk, which it is. This is yet another example of election interference, far more profound than anything Russia ever did, by American tech companies. So what is the federal government doing about it? Federal officials will tell you a lot about Russia and the threat they pose to our democracy, but no one ever seems to mention this. Lawmakers recently held antitrust hearings. The president signed an executive order that could revoke the special immunity that some tech websites receive from lawsuits. But none of that's happened yet. Will anything happen? Matt Whitaker is the former acting U.S. Attorney General. He's the author of the book Above the Law. He joins us tonight. Matt Whitaker, thanks so much for coming on. So you can imagine, and I'm sure you share the frustration, it's infuriating to watch large monopolies change the course of American history by subverting our elections, and no one's doing anything about it. Will anyone in power do anything to stop this before Election Day, do you believe?
Glad to be with you, Tucker. And yes, I actually do believe that we are going to get to the bottom of this insidious, really censorship of mostly conservative voices on social media. And I think the Department of Justice has been looking at this issue. And I also believe that because of the way the algorithms that Facebook and Twitter and the like use to provide your news feed, I think that could be viewed and may be viewed by this Department of Justice as a campaign contribution, an illegal campaign contribution that ultimately I think they will step in and take action.
I mean, we've got 2 months left, and it's really not even a question of trying to get Trump reelected or helping Joe Biden. I mean, I think the implications are far more profound and long-lasting than that. Google single-handedly could erode any public confidence in democracy. And I just wonder if people at the Department of Justice see this problem in those terms.
I think they do, and I think what is also happening among these companies, Facebook in particular, they have so much data on their individual users that they can essentially manipulate what you see, how you see it, and therefore, based on the feedback loop that is provided, they can then try to influence you to whether it's use a product, vote for a candidate. It's really, again, it's insidious, and I think the Department of Justice has to act because our democracy can probably not stand this for another election cycle.
I wonder, I mean, since you're very familiar with how the federal government actually works, since you ran our most important agency, do you think it's fair to say that there are federal officials who are afraid to take on Google?
I don't think so. I think Bill Barr, the Attorney General, is not afraid, really unafraid of anything. And ultimately, it's what laws and what tools do we have? As in the executive branch, we execute the law. And so, you know, the Section 230 of the Communications Decency Act provides a safe harbor for these companies that I think, you know, Congress needs to act and to provide some relief so that there can be more enforcement on that front.
Well, that's exactly right. I mean, that is a legislative matter. They gave these companies that special carve-out. We didn't get it, and they haven't taken it back. Matt Whitaker, thank you for that. Great to see you. Congrats on the book.
Thank you, Tucker. Good to see you.
Well, physicians, researchers, scientists got a very clear message from the tech monopolies this spring. Don't question the coronavirus guidelines. Shh, with your science talk. This has been going on for months. We'll show you how next. Welcome back to a special edition of Tucker Carlson Tonight. When Facebook and Twitter banned physicians from giving their evidence-based views about the coronavirus lockdowns, it wasn't a one-off abuse of power. They've been doing things like this all year long, subverting our knowledge of science, keeping scientists from presenting their data. None of this has gotten much media coverage, if any. As soon as the lockdowns began, YouTube preemptively declared that no one could use the platform to challenge the health guidelines of local health officials. In other words, if you don't think you need a mask, or if you think you can attend an indoor gathering, or if you have any information or view that doesn't comport with local authorities, YouTube was going to ban you. Google was going to keep you from speaking. Back in April, we spoke to Dave Rubin. He saw what was going on. He explained how authoritarians use public health crises to advance their own agendas, to consolidate their own power. He also discussed whether tech censors would come for this show. He said they would. And of course, he was right. Do you notice that the norms and standards, to quote The Atlantic, of American life seems to have changed overnight, and all of a sudden, we're being told we must accept things that would have been completely unimaginable 2 months ago?
Well, Tucker, there's so much to talk about here. First off, I didn't realize I was going to be on a sci-fi show tonight, but we are entering a dystopian future. We are entering an authoritarian future because, as I've said to you before, authoritarians love authoritarianism. So they're taking this opportunity when we're all confused, we're all locked at home. The only way we can communicate with each other is through their pipes, is through YouTube and Facebook and Twitter and everything else. And they're actually finally saying to us, this is who we are. I mean, the Atlantic is ridiculous. I don't know anyone that reads it anymore. But the bigger issue here is the YouTube, Twitter, Facebook component of it, because we are now saying to them, or they're saying to us, we're going to tell you what's true. And if you dare go against what we say is true, not necessarily what is true, but what we say is true, then we're going to boot you. So, of course, the other part of this is that it will always only be one side that gets booted here. I mean, is Facebook running around and is Twitter and YouTube running around? Are they taking away all the Russian collusion videos that were up over the past couple of years? I'm pretty sure MSNBC has a YouTube channel that still has videos on it. I mean, that was pushing lies and misinformation and propaganda. So we need to debate these things. If I was to interview these two doctors that you showed the video of, would my channel be deleted? Am I not allowed to talk about that? Is that not what science and open inquiry really is about, that you test theories and then you find out what actually is true? And as you pointed out, and this may be the most important part, it's not as if the WHO is infallible. They were literally just a few weeks ago telling us not to wear masks. Now, by law, I tried to go to CVS yesterday, and I wasn't going to wear a mask. I was just going to run in and out, and it said in the front of the store, it said, by law, you have to wear a mask. So it's not as if these people have some total stranglehold on truth that the rest of us have to bow to unless they force us to. And unfortunately, big tech has got us now more than ever because we're all trapped at home and it's the only way we can communicate.
So no one in science has a monopoly on the truth. Science, in fact, is a rejection of the idea that there is a monopoly on truth. It's the endless search for what we can prove. That's what science is. This has nothing to do with it. You introduced as a hypothetical the notion that you could be deleted your channel for hosting this video. I'm not sure that is hypothetical anymore, and my question is very simple. How long before they come for you? You just wrote a book called Don't Burn This Book. How long before they come for the show? Sincere questions.
Yeah, well, at some level, I don't want to think about it. But, you know, Tucker, you've written a couple books, and you know that the publishing process takes quite some time. So I finished this book back in July. But I'm very proud that the ideas that I present in Don't Burn This Book are more relevant now than they even were then, because I talk about big tech. I talk about fake news, all of the things that we're constantly talking about. And am I worried? Yeah, I'm worried. I mean, look, everyone should be worried. Everyone should be worried. This is why I started Locals.com, my tech company, because I think we need digital homes. Anyone that's online and you think that YouTube or Facebook or Twitter is there to protect you, you're the product. I mean, these things are free, except free, meaning they just took your soul in exchange for it. We should own our data. You should own your own content. We need to start rethinking everything. I mean, I think this is why I'm actually quite enthused about the world right now, as depressing and upsetting as some of the news is. You know, there's a new world coming on the horizon, and I think a lot of people are rethinking the way they look at the world, the way, do you want to commute? Do you want to live in a big city? Do you want to be so reliant on the institutions and systems that we've always been reliant on? So I think we have to rethink things. And you know what, Tucker, this is still America for a little while, and I believe in old-fashioned hard work and competition and ingenuity, and I think that's what will fix this. But yeah, we got a big battle to fight in front of us.
Yeah, and maybe these companies exist because Congress gave them a carve-out in federal legislation. And you sort of wonder, where's Senator Mike Lee on this question, sucking up to Google?